Good morning, everyone. Many of you have been asking me for an updated guide on how to play Miguel in Season 2. What I actually want to do is go back and remake my original guide on Miguel, which was my first YouTube video ever, and for that reason it's far from perfect. I want to sit down for like a full 3 or 4 hours and explain everything in perfect detail, but that's going to take a lot more time to prepare. So what I can definitely do for now is go into practice mode and give you my explanation for how I think Miguel should be played in Season 2 with respect to the changes that came to him. Miguel is a character who got substantially buffed, and he was previously considered to be one of the weakest characters in the game. I think he was actually probably in the bottom 3 in Season 1, but currently he is really quite respectable. I think the changes that came to him make a lot of sense and make him much more rewarding. Where Miguel was always a very fun character to play, you're now no longer going to have to feel like you are hindering your own progress as a player by selecting a weak character when you play him, and I think that's really the most welcome change that could have come to him, and it's making Tekken 7 a lot more fun for me currently because as you probably know, he is my favorite character. But let's talk about the important buffs and also some important nerfs that you need to know about when you play this character. So I think the first thing we should do is start talking about the counter hit 4 or the magic 4 that Miguel now has. This is a very, very important change and a supremely powerful move. I really don't think it can be overstated just how standout powerful this magic 4 is right now. The reason that I say this is that if you look at most Magic 4s in the game, they tend to give you awkward, difficult to do, or low damage combos, and that's a way for Namco to sort of control them and make sure that they don't become too powerful, because it is very, very potent to have counter tools that are this fast. And the big exception to that rule that we had in Season 1 was Katarina's standing, or Magic 4, but that was nerfed going into the new season, which gave me the impression that they're trying to normalize this sort of thing out of the game. They want you to have to do a sort of improvised and kind of low damage combo for your Magic hit, for your Magic 4 combos. With Miguel, that is not the case at all, and he just gets very powerful and easy to do high damage combos with wall convertibility off of this Magic 4, which makes it, in my opinion, one of the most powerful counter hit tools currently in the game, and possibly the best counter hit Magic 4 in Tekken 7. I'm going to explain why or how to combo off of it in a little bit. First thing you need to know is that the frame data was slightly modified. It is currently -9 on block, which is very, very good because it's completely safe. It's slightly worse on block than it was previously, but the fact that it's still safe is a saving grace for the move, and one of the things that makes it so supremely useful. Now, Miguel was always a character who had good counter tools, especially with his highs, because he had the back one, the slap, when you can see the limited range of this move right here, and you always had the telefonazo, which was very powerful as well. But if you have a look at the range of these moves from out here, if you have a look at the back one and the telefonazo, and you compare that to the counter hit Magic 4, you can see that the range is actually much better on this move. Because this has powerful range, is lightning fast, and completely safe on block, I think this should currently be considered your most powerful counter hit tool. And if you are a Miguel player, in many situations where you were previously looking for counter hits with your back one and your forward two, I think the Magic 4 should actually supersede that now, because it is your best option, which is sad, because these moves are also very, very cool and I like them a lot. They will still see occasional use, I assume, but this is really your best option most of the time now. Let's show you what I suggest for the combo right now. There are many different ways you can do this combo, and you can do some stuff that involves clutch dashing and some difficult connections, but I don't like combos that are potentially going to fail in the middle of a match. I'm going to show you a very easy option that I found that gives you very good damage and wall convertibility. We previously thought that the reason you could now use this as a combo was because of a buff to the hitbox of forward 4-2, the Cyclone Slap, which is apparently not the case. You can actually just make a combo like that, which is going to or which means that the change is actually to the Magic 4 itself. And so the combo that I'm currently going to suggest that you do is going to look like this. And as with all Miguel combos, that ender can be converted from 4421 into 4422 for extended wall carry and a full wall spat, which is going to look like this. And the only difficult or finicky part of this combo, if I'm going to explain it a little bit here, I'm launching with the standing 4, doing another standing 4, I'm doing down back 2, then I'm doing down forward 1 and holding 4 to go into Savage, and I'm then spinning using the Savage 4. And then just doing an ender as normal. The only difficult part of the combo that is going to be something you have to adjust to is that after you go into Savage off of your down forward 1, you want to press the Savage 4 as fast as possible and get it out really quickly. In a lot of Miguel combos, you're probably used to spending a short while in Savage before getting your spin move out. That happens a lot with Miguel, but in this case you really need to get the 4 out as quickly as possible to make the combo connect. But if you can manage that and you can delay the forward in your deep dash 4421 for the ender, this combo is going to be very easy to do, and it's going to do you solid in most situations. I really think it's easy and fun to do, and just very, very good overall. So what an amazing change for Miguel. Really a significant buff to him. Let's turn off counter hit and go into the next change, which I think is the second most important change that came to him. We're going to get to what I think is the most important a little bit later, but for now I want to talk about the buffs to your jab strings and how you should currently use them. Now, the first thing you need to know is that you have this 1-2-4, which is an extension off of your 1-2, your normal jab string. You do still have poor range on your jabs, by the way. The range of these moves have not been buffed, but the string is so much better right now that you can run in deeper and just jab at your opponent to set up these powerful mix-up situations, making the situation a lot better. But your 10-frame block punishment is still poor in terms of its range, and that's something to keep in mind. So yeah, you have the 4 extension, which is now going to cause a powerful knockdown for guaranteed damage on the floor. It also gives you an improved 20 damage as opposed to 17, which you did before, meaning that this 4 extension is very, very powerful and one of your best moves currently. Another thing that they did is to make the 1+2 extension to the 1-2 much faster to come out. And so what this means is that because of the fact that the 4 extension is a duckable high, you now have a potent mid that is scary enough that your opponent has to respect it, meaning that they're not going to be as comfortable ducking your 4 extension. And that's very, very good, because this 4 extension is supremely powerful, both when it hits but also when it gets blocked. The frame data on block for these two moves was not modified going into the new season, but that was always a very, very good aspect of them. So let's explain how this works. The 4 on block is +8, which is really amazing. It's a rare situation in Tekken to be able to have 8+ frames on block. It also gives you the option of going into the Savage stance by holding forward, meaning that when you do get this move blocked, you're going to get a large chunk of guaranteed damage on the floor. Currently gives you 45 for your best, or at least in my case, my recommended option. But it's going to give you +8 frames and a completely free mix-up out of Savage on block, meaning that it's entirely a win-win situation as long as your opponent is not ducking this high. If they attempt to duck this high, the 1+2 extension is what you're going to use to hit people who are crouching. This is still slow enough that it can be interrupted, and the most dangerous thing you're going to run into when you're applying this move is fast counter hit tools. If your opponent hard reads the fact that you're going to do the 1+2 and they have a powerful move such as a magic 4 of their own, they can interrupt you with a counter hit here and launch you. So you do still run a risk while applying this move, but the fact that both options are so scary and relatively fast right now means that most of the time your opponent will be just either stand blocking or hard reading and going for the duck, meaning that this is a true and potent mix-up. Now, the 1+2 extension does not give you the option of going into Savage stance, but it does give you plus frames on block with +4, so it's half the frame advantage, half of the 8 that you get for the 4, but it's still very, very good and gives you free mix-ups. Should also be noted that the 1+2 will also give you guaranteed damage on the floor. I used down 3, which gives you 50, so either option on hit is either going to be 45 damage on the floor and or 50 damage on the floor, maybe even more depending on whether or not your jab's actually connected to begin with, meaning that you can get almost full combo damage off of connecting with these options, and every time you get them blocked, you are going to be able to mix your opponent up. If you're using the 4, which is the stronger option in my opinion, you get more plus frames and savage, but with the 1+2 you're going to get no savage, and you're going to force your opponent into crouch, which is also a very powerful situation to be in for Miguel. So I think the buff to these strings is very, very potent, and it means that if you are going to be quote-unquote poke-based character with Miguel, you now have very respectable jabs, or a very respectable jab string to complement your overall poking game. It also means that every time you do manage to punish a -10 move, despite the poor range on your jabs, you're going to want to tack on either of these extensions, meaning that you can turn a small -10 block punish into a very potent and powerful mix-up for you every time. This is a very substantial buff, and if you're looking at the gameplay I'm doing with Miguel currently, you can see just how much damage I derive from these strings. But really, I think the best part about this is all of the good things that it allows you to do out of Savage. So we need to talk about the changes to Savage next. I will, however, just say here that you have the option of going into Savage off of the 4, and I'm going to go ahead and say, because I want to be useful and give you sort of, specific tips in this little explanation, that I think you should always transition into Savage when you're using the 4 extension. Whether you're getting blocked or getting the hit, I think it's always a better option to go into Savage than to remain standing. So you don't really need to think about the situation, in my opinion. I think it's always the best option, because if you're going to get the knockdown, your highest damage option is going to be your Savage 2, which is going to give you 45 damage. You can get good damage even if you don't go into Savage with stuff like the down 1+2 or the charge, but the best damage is going to come from the Savage 2. If you don't get the hit, you don't get the knockdown, but your opponent blocks this move instead, you're going to want to mix your opponent up. But I actually think that you are currently more powerful when mixing up from Savage than you are when you're not in Savage, meaning that on both block and hit, actually doing the Savage transition is a better option than not doing it. So I think you should always transition into Savage when you are applying 1, 2, 4. Moving on, I guess we should talk about Savage and the buffs to Savage, and I'm going to now say what I currently think is the most powerful change really that Miguel got in this patch, or the one that at least has given me the most traction and the most damage in the new season. And I don't think this is going to be as powerful as it currently is going forward. I'm going to explain what I mean here, but let's set Lars to guard for now. Or should we? No, let's explain first that Savage is your mix-up stance, and when you're mixing up from a stance like this, you want to have powerful mids and you want to have powerful lows, and when your opponent has to respect both options, that's when you've successfully created a mix-up stance, in my opinion. You have always had a couple of different options for your lows, and let's look at the lows first before we go into the mids, which was what I was jumping ahead to right there. You've always had the option of down 4-3, which is 20 damage, the March of Tyranny. This is a natural combo, so both of these hits are going to be guaranteed as long as the first low connects. It gives you 20 damage, and it also gives you the option to remain in Savage if you want to keep on going with the Savage stance. You also have the down back 4, which is a seeable and launch punishable knockdown low, which gives you a mini combo on hit. It's only 45, so it's not a full launcher or anything like that, but it does have the dangers of a low such as a snake edge because of how slow and punishable it is. But this had its impact frames buffed. It comes out a little bit faster now, that meaning that at least in the online environment, I think this low should see occasional use. It's also a homing move, meaning that while you might not want to use it straight up as a knockdown low, if you predict that your opponent will either do a high or start moving sideways, this is going to crush the highs and catch an opponent who's moving sideways, meaning that it is actually an option that you want to keep in mind, because it's going to cover a couple of different bases for you in the low mix-up. But, and this is the next and most important part, the recommended low that I'm going to suggest that you use for almost all of your Savage mix-ups going forward is the down back 3, and this is another move that got substantially buffed in the new season. This is your version of a hatchet kick. You can hear that it currently has the sound effect of a hatchet kick even. This had its damage buff to 20. You can see that it actually sparks on normal hit now, which it didn't do before. And the reason this move is so supremely good is that it has, first of all, massive range. If you're in a savage situation where you're mixing up, your opponent's not going to be able to backdash away from this. You can see that the range is actually absolutely massive. He takes a great big instep, and this is so good that some advanced Miguel players will actually go into a manual savage stance from a pretty far out range and use this almost like a keep out tool. They will stress their opponent out by going into manual savage from a range and apply down back 3, which is pretty powerful. But anyway, in, for example, this situation where you are getting your 1, 2, 4 blocked and you're in Savage here mixing up, the down back 3 is going to be your main low. For the reason that it has that good damage, the good range, the decent tracking, but the other really good thing about it is the fact that it still has its very good counter hit properties, and it's going to give you guaranteed damage when it does counter it. It gives you 41 when you do this stomp, which I think is the recommended option. It's what I use. You can use down 3+4, but as you can see, that's less. So I'm going to recommend that you go for the stomp, but it just has so many good properties now. Its speed, its range, its counter hit properties, and its damage, that I think that this is going to be your best option in most situations, and it's going to be my recommended low for your Savage mix-up. It's just such a good and powerful low. Very, very, very potent. Again, kind of like the situation with the standing 4 and how it supersedes your back 1 and your forward 2, I think this is currently superseding most of your other low options out of Savage, and it's going to be what you go to most of the time. Now, moving on to the other buffs to Savage, and we're going to talk a little bit about mids now. The stuff you're going to be using to mix up your down back 3s and your occasional down back 4s. You used to mainly use up forward 3 for a very good safe knockdown mid in Savage, and this is good enough that it definitely works. It's still a powerful option that you will be using, but I think, and this is what I wanted to get to as one of the most powerful changes currently to Miguel, is the changes to your Savage down forward 2, which is your very high powered, extremely long range launcher out of Savage. This is very, very good. And I'm going to show you why right now, because the buff that came to this move is it's very punishable. It's always been launch punishable, but they gave it a massive amount of knockback, as you can see right here on block. So basically what this means is that many opponents are going to struggle to actually punish this on block, meaning that the move is so much safer than it's been before. And that makes it the risk-reward ratio of this move has been changed so much in Miguel's favor that you can now use this as one of your favored mids out of Savage stance to mix up your down back 3, providing that your opponent is not punishing this correctly. If you are playing Lars, he's a character who is going to do this quite comfortably, punish it I mean, if he knows exactly how to do it. But a lot of characters who have the option to launch punish this move aren't going to be able to launch punish it. They are going to have to rely on a long range powerful punish that might be 12, 13 or 14 frames or even slower, but has the range that allows for it to connect in this knockback situation. Meaning that despite the fact that the move is launch punishable, you're very rarely going to get launched for using it, and that makes it, like I say, the risk reward ratio is so much in favor of this move right now that you can currently use it as part of your Savage mix-up. And while I think up forward 3 is a good move, and it's good to get a powerful knockdown mid that is safe on block, being able to take a slightly larger risk, but sometimes, you know, getting an extremely powerful launcher like this is just so good that you can't really ignore it. So I mean, the combo is going to be absolutely massive. I use this, which is just my bread and butter off of a lot of my combos, but you can get even more damage here. You're easily going to get somewhere between 70 and 80 for connecting with this. And I want to say something here that I think is very important. Currently, Miguel is very powerful in the online environment because so many people are struggling to adjust to the changes to him. Specifically with this move, I think a lot of people don't really know how to comfortably punish it with their character. character yet. And this is something that is going to change in the coming weeks, and it's definitely true in higher levels of competition. So while I think this mix-up is currently extremely powerful and one of the most powerful things Miguel can currently do, this is something that is going to bleed back and become progressively weaker over the next couple of weeks. But that doesn't mean that this isn't going to be powerful anymore. It's going to be supremely useful, especially when you're fighting in low ranks where people don't know how to deal with it properly. But it's not going to be as powerful, in my opinion, 2 weeks from now as it is currently. But, and this is very important, it's still going to be very good, and you're still going to want to try this mid, and you're still going to want to attempt it, and then you're going to have to adjust if your opponent is dealing with it properly and start using slightly safer and more conservative mids, such as the up 4-3, maybe even the back 2, which they gave a buff. Instead of this launcher. And I had a couple of really high-level opponents yesterday, people who have mighty divine rulers on their mains, and those kinds of very, very high-level players will, look at a move and go, how do I punish this? Oh, I use this move. They put that into their repertoire, and then very robotically they become very good at using it right away. And I saw a couple of those players yesterday who, when I did this move, knew exactly how they wanted to punish it. It's very interesting to note, however, that the ones who were punishing it instinctively just right away were not using launchers because they weren't able to launch this move. They had to use something like a long range, 13 or 12 frame or 14 frame to get like a knockdown and some damage, and that's still so much better than getting launched that I think this move is very powerful. It should also be stated, obviously, that this move has extremely long range and very potent high crush properties. So if your opponent is ducking, it's going to launch them. They can't get away from it because of its massive range. You can see that the range is absolutely ridiculous. And if they start doing something like fast highs to maybe try and counter hit you out of Savage or something like that, you're going to go under all of those highs and launch them anyway. The way to beat this move, if Miguel is applying it on block, meaning that Miguel doesn't necessarily have a huge frame advantage, is to actually walk sideways around it, because they have given this move slightly decreased tracking properties. So it's a very linear but extremely potent mid, and currently I think one of the most powerful changes that sort of went under the radar when we looked at Miguel initially. I remember saying that I think whether or not this is useful is going to depend on how much pushback they've actually given you here. It turns out they've given you a whole lot of pushback, and it's very significant. So you are going to be forcing a lot of mix-ups using your powerful jab strings, and when you are in Savage Stance, I think down back 3 is going to be your main mid. I think down 4-2 is going to be down back 3 is going to be your main low. I think down 4-2 is going to be one of your new main mids, much more potent in your arsenal. And if your opponent is dealing with this in a way where it's turning out to be a detriment for you, then maybe consider going back to more conservative and safe mids. The buff to Savage back 2, this has a built-in punch parry, which is currently a normal hit launcher, and people were getting very excited about that. I personally don't think it's such a huge change. I don't think it is a highlight of the buffs that came to him, because punch parries are pretty difficult to stick, and there's going to be super specific situations where you know exactly what you think the opponent will do. You know that the punch parry will work, and if you can pull that off, you're going to be able to get the launch. But compared to something like this, which is going to be coming out several times in a single round, I think this is more of a minor change, but just be aware that if you are able to punch parry with this move currently, you can actually turn that into a full combo, which is very cool. The next major buff that we need to talk about now that we're leaving Savage behind is the 3-4. This was buffed to become a natural combo, and it comes out at 13 frames, which makes it very, very powerful. It is currently, I think, minus 12 on block, which is very fair. I mean, this could have been minus 14 and still be kind of fair, so it's pretty good for a move that is this powerful. And this is going to be your best option for 13 frame block punishment, meaning that your block punishment has been slightly buffed. So currently with Miguel, you have pretty weak options for your 10 frames. You have pretty weak options for your 10, 11, and 12 really, but then at 13 you get powerful stuff with the 3-4. With 14 you always have good stuff. You can use the 3-4 for that. You can use your shove, and then for 15 you have a hop kick. So 13 and up you have good block punishment with Miguel, but 10 to 12, which is the most important range by far in my opinion, he's still quite poor, meaning that it's not an area where he excels, but you do have this move right now, and it is very good. It's going to work for several different moves that you do see quite often. For example, Kuma's Power Crush, minus 13, so very good. This was your previous option for 30 damage, the down forward 1-2. That's still pretty good, and you're still going to be able. You're still going to want to use that for any situation where you have to use mids to punish, because the first hit of the 3-4 is a high, which can be dangerous. So keep that in mind. But yeah, it's a significant buff to your block punishment. It's a decent string to actually throw out every once in a while. It can work wonders at the wall. Especially when you're close, because it knocks into the side kind of awkwardly. You have to be kind of close to be able to get a powerful wall splat off of it, but it does work, and it is very good damage. So very, very good buff from Miguel as well. The next change I want to talk about is the fact that your Rage Drive, so let's turn on Rage Drive, or Rage, let's turn on Rage, has been buffed in the sense that it's going to give you more damage. It's not going to cause the opponent to be airborne. If you look at Lars's feet here, they remain on the ground throughout this entire animation, meaning that the scaling is in your favor when you're using this move right now, making it a much more powerful launcher. This was a move that previously struggled to give you really good damage because of the fact that the scaling on the first two hit was a little bit off. The way you mainly use this Rage Drive is you can do stuff like down back one, and you can turn that into again in air quotes, a full launcher, because it doesn't give you super potent damage, but it gives you a lot better damage now. But the Rage Drive is currently much more powerful. It's just something that you throw out without setting it up first with a move like full crouch down forward 4, with a move like down back 1. You can actually just do this now. It has very good range, surprisingly good range, and it is a somewhat potent launcher, which is going to lead to good damage. It's not going to be punishable or anything like that on block, so it should be compared, in my opinion, to something like Kazumi's Rage Drive currently. A mid option that you can throw out, and if you get a hit with it, you're going to be able to launch and usually take the round. But if you should get blocked, then at least you've wasted your rage, which is the price you pay, but you're not going to get punished, meaning that you're not going to lose the round for not connecting with it. So compared to, and this is what Rage Drives are supposed to be in my opinion, a comeback mechanic that doesn't have as large of a reward as the Rage Art, but you also don't set in stone the fact that you are going to die if you don't connect with it. It's much safer, and as you saw right there, you can get pretty powerful combos off of this Rage Drive currently. It's really quite potent, and I think that's a very welcome change to the character. You can see I did 63 right there with a small improvised combo, so it's very, very good, and you should be using this. My big recommendation is try out using it not necessarily after down back 1 and stuff like that. Try using it just as is, maybe as a whiff punisher. The way you would use something like Kazumi's Rage Drive, it's very, very good for that now. Let's turn off Rage and talk about another change. This is not as significant, but I still think it's good enough that we should mention it, and that's the fact that they've made it easier to hit confirm a natural combo off of forward 3-4, meaning that this is a good wall splatting tool. It was always pretty good for this, but the hit confirm is so easy to do right now that you can use this at the wall, and if you hit confirm the first hit, you can get the 4 and always get a good and powerful wall combo. So that's something that I recommend you use. It's been made more punishable on block, meaning that this is basically a situation where Namco is saying, we've made this easier to do for you, so now it's up to you to make sure that you don't mess it up, because if you do mess this up, you're going to get punished heavily. And I think that's completely fair. Anybody should be able to hit confirm this. It's a very easy hit confirm and get their wall splat here, and if they do mess it up, then you're going to eat that punish, but you're also going to deserve to eat that punish, and that's pretty important. Now that we're at the wall, one thing I want to bring up here quickly is that your Savage 2, which is, I a lightning fast and very powerful mid that you have out of Savage has had its damage buffed. It currently does 32, which is a lot. It did a lot before, it does even more now. And because this is used as a combo ender, sometimes in the open, but almost all the time at the wall, it means that your wall damage with Miguel has currently been, or has been buffed in the new season. So if we cause a wall splat with a back 4 here, which is a common wall splatting tool with Miguel, and you look at this wall combo, his standard wall combo, you can see that the damage is very, very potent. When you get one of those high wall splats, you can actually get, this is not quite high enough, but you can actually get 1, 2, 4 into Savage 2. So if you are in one of those situations where you have a very high wall splat, or your opponent is in the air up, near close to the wall, that's something you can use to quickly convert into the wall. Because of the improved damage of the 4, that's going to cause a nice hit, and then you can use that Savage 4. You can actually, even in those situations, get your full wall combo after it and get really high damage. So what I'm trying to say here is consider your 1, 2, 4 a new and powerful wall splatting tool, but also wall conversion tool for those awkward situations where you have a very small and specific amount of distance to the wall and your opponent is high up in the air. But yeah, also obviously very good for wall splatting. What an amazing buff. This 1, 2, 4 is such a potent move right now. It's really going to be a signature move for Miguel going forward. While we're at the wall, maybe we should mention the fact that your Savage 1-4 is your wall bounce move with Miguel. And wall bounce, we're going to talk about this when I do my full review of Season 2 and the changes to the game that it has brought. But I currently think that wall bounce is not a very significant mechanic. As soon as I heard that the wall bounce is only going to be working on standing opponents and it's not something that you can do in the middle of a combo, that meant that I didn't have to be worried about the combo damage getting out of control, which was my initial impression of the wall bounce. I was worried that it was going to lead to too much combo damage, but it also meant that very few characters are actually going to be enjoying the wall splat mechanic, because it's locked away in a specific move in a specific stance for a lot of characters. Elisa does not only have to be in a specific stance, she also needs to do a specific transition into that stance that in turn requires that she already has a meter that she's willing to spend. So there are all these layers that you have to fulfill before you're able to even apply your wall bounce move, and the fact that that is the case for a lot of characters means that not a lot of people are going to be using a lot of wall bouncing. There are characters out there, like for example Bob, who got a wall bounce move that was already a potent wall splatting tool for them, and those are the characters that are going to be doing the wall splatting. If back 4 was Miguel's bounce move, then you would see a lot of bouncing out of Miguel, but I don't think he's going to be bouncing a whole lot with this, because the situation is just a little bit too specific. But it should be mentioned that the 1-4 is a good move for Miguel. It is powerful. It is something that you should be using even if it wasn't a wall bounce move, and it's a fine tool to use at the wall. So that's something you can do for the quick conversion there, apparently. 1, 2, 4, Savage 2. But I'm not here to practice combos, so let's leave that for now. All I'm trying to say here is that you can definitely use this looking for a wall bounce, but my impression of the wall bounce overall is that because you only have, on average, 1 wall bounce move per character, and it's in a pretty specific situation most of the time, it's very easy for your opponent to deal with because it's a little bit too obvious and a little bit too difficult to do. But if you want to wall bounce with the opponent and you're in a situation where you're kind of like out here, it's going to be a potent option, so be aware of that. I'm trying to think of if there's anything else we need to talk about with the character that I'm forgetting. I've definitely said most things that I think are important, so let me have a quick think here to see if I'm forgetting something. You didn't get a buff to your combo off of your while standing here, which was something that maybe you wanted. Minor change to stuff like while standing 1+2. It's not a move that you're going to be using anyway. I still think it's completely useless. I think maybe we're actually done here. I mean, this string was nerfed. Both of the extensions offer the downforward 1-1. So now you don't not only run the risk of getting ducked for the downforward 1-1 itself, you also are in much more precarious situations when you're getting blocks or hits with the 2 extensions. So this string is good, but a lot worse than it used to be. And so my opinion here is that your jab string, because this is really your preferred way to try and force Savage Dance mix-ups right now, and your sort of preferred jab string, and that's going to lead to mix-ups, it's going to replace your down forward 1-1 in a lot of situations, but you're still going to have to use this move. It's still going to be good, mostly because of the fact that it is a very fast mid, but just be aware that you need to be using down forward 1-2 to mix up the down forward 1-1 to make it difficult for your opponent to confidently duck this extension. But this is still going to be punishable on block. So it's that old situation Miguel often found himself in, which was the reason he was pretty weak, where he always had to run the risk of eating heavy damage when he was applying his mix-ups. And I think he was really like the most high risk, high reward kind of character in the game. That might be because I have inexperience with a lot of different characters, but he had to take massive risks when he was just doing normal pokes. But now, because of this jab string and the improvements to Savage Stance, I think the risk reward ratio is much more in Miguel's favor, making him so much more dangerous. So if I'm going to wrap this up a little bit with some conclusions, I think the way you're going to be playing Miguel is very aggressively. I think he is much more of a rushdown character than he's ever been, and that's why if you look at my gameplay with Miguel currently, some of the viewers were picking up on the fact that I wasn't doing a lot of backdashing in my gameplay, which was true. I looked at it myself and found that was extremely true, and the reason for that is I think that I've more and more come to believe Miguel is an aggressive rushdown kind of character, and the more aggressively and more confidently I try and play him, the better I tend to do. So that's something I want to recommend to all of you out there. If you're currently playing Miguel as a more defensive character and you're looking for a lot of whiff punishment, his whiff punishment is still pretty poor. This is still very punishable. His hop kick is good, but it doesn't have massive range. So if you're in your opponent's grill and you're constantly using jab strings, you're constantly, massaging them with powerful mids, you're constantly going into Savage and just, you're mixing in throws, you're doing all these different things, and it's just hit spark after hit spark, that's going to stress your opponent out because he feels so aggressive and so powerful, and he's so scary to be around, because a single hit can lead to all of this massive damage. I mean, always above 40, all the time. Powerful counter hits as well, which means that you can never, be confident when you're trying to interrupt him with stuff. Launches that come out of nowhere. That's really the environment where I think this character excels. He also has a lot of powerful different armor moves, meaning that the Savage Back 3, for example, which was also buffed, that I think Miguel actually thrives more in his opponent's face than anywhere else, especially considering the buffs he got in this new season. So I think you should play him as an aggressive counter-hit character. Not exactly complete rushdown, but aggressive counter-hit character. You want to be on top of your opponent. You have good options for Oki, so I think that's where you're going to want to play him. I'm going to mention, before you wrap this up, a small thing that I forgot, is that my favorite option for wall Oki, so if we launch the opponent from mid-screen here, this is something that you would see me do a lot with the character. I would forgo my wall ender for spiking my opponent with 4-4-2-1 and applying powerful wall Oki with the character, and my preferred option here was the down 3+4. The reason being that this is going to hit grounded opponents as well as re-wall splat people who get up crouching, meaning that it's a very, very good option. So the only option that can beat this is getting up standing, and then I would be using the down 3 stomp for that situation, which is still good, but you need to be aware that this was nerfed and is now very punishable on block. I think launch punishable at something like -15 on block, meaning that it's actually a pretty dangerous option to use here if you're playing against a person who knows his stuff, who knows his frame data. And for that reason, you might want to be careful about using it at the wall as much. Another good option that I'm going to recommend that you consider is the armor move. It's, the back 4. This is also punishable, but because it's going to re-wall splat crouchers, and it's going to beat, get up kicks and armor through them, it's another good option. But just be aware that this is a more precarious move to use, and most situations where the down 3+4 will work, you can actually get better stuff by stomping on your opponent with a down 3 or something like that. So it's not as useful as it used to be. It still causes this powerful stagger on counter hit, and that's still going to give you a wall splat on counter hit at the wall as well, which is a rare situation, but it does happen. Okay, before I really start rambling and getting really too specific, we're gonna wrap this tutorial up. But I think I got to explain everything I really wanted to talk about. I hope you are enjoying Miguel in the new season. I think the fact that he was buffed to the point where he's so much more useful is really one of the most fun things that has happened during the entire run of Tekken 7 so far for me, and it cements him in my mind as my one main going forward. Everything else for me is going to be secondary characters. Because I tend to juggle two to three mains, but this I'm confident enough in Miguel right now that I'm going to be comfortable maining him, and now that I am going to be appearing in some tournaments going forward, I'm going to be at EVO Japan next year, for example. I have a character to, home in on and practice really deeply for those situations as well, which is a lot of fun for me. But I hope you're enjoying Season 2. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Bye-bye for now.